Talk Radio.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys that are listening this morning is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. I'm going to keep my big BA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Joshua Daniels, and Joshua builds ships, self-contained. Joshua builds generators, and these are the generators that I've selected to tell you about because they fit perfectly in with the whole Liberty Village concept. And I've got videos, and I've done a lot of work on the website. I'd like for you guys to, it's slow loading, it's still too big, all of that's probably true. But we've got information on there on a number of new things that you need to know about. I analyze the news every day. I read everything that comes in from all over the world. Kind of what I do. And Joshua, the news, we're worried about a banking crash. Well, there's going to be a crash. There's going to be a new depression. Oh, Fukushima, there's radiation coming over here. Oh, we could lose a power plant any time. How do we survive if all the electricity goes off? How do we survive if our water and our food supply are poisoned? And how do you protect your family from aluminum, chemtrails, uranium, fluoride, Fukushima, and pesticides, and not to mention the GMO foods by Archer Daniels, Midland, or Monsanto? When you start laying it all out, it adds up to a tax on people, not just in America, but worldwide. And to me, the only answer that I could come up with over the last 25 years or 40 years of research is to generate your own electricity from everything God gave you, to grow your own food the way God meant for you to, the way this planet was designed. It was designed to feed us. Why is that so difficult? Oh, let's see, the ninth plank on the Communist Manifesto, corporate farms. Is that what we're facing right now?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir. You have one of the answers to this, and I'm talking about the expandable photovoltaic, the generator that you can run your house on, and all you got to do, more power you need, the more panels you add. And also on my site, folks, we're now featuring holistic water filters that filter out fluoride, radiation, metals, and more.
Nice. Very nice. Everything you described there, that's kind of a depressing list, but it's actually the short list. I mean, we're being hit on so many fronts
There's an old military saying, once is an accident, twice is happenstance, 3 times is enemy action. And everything you're talking about is the 4th or 5th or 6th in a series of things where any fool should be looking at that and saying, okay, 30 years ago it was enemy action. Now it's the enemy winning. I mean, we got to get moving on this. And we've got some severe handicaps as a group that we will overcome, but we're going to bleed first, really.
What now? What I've told people, their main strategy, which is the oldest maxim in warfare, is divide and conquer, and that's what they try to do. Oh, you're a Republican. Well, I'm a Democrat. Oh, you're a liberal. Well, I'm a conservative. And my God, we're fighting each other. What we're talking about is our survival here. And you mentioned, I've talked about being in a war for the last, maybe the last 100 years. Maybe we've been in Armageddon for the last 100 years, and the press didn't tell us.
Well, the constitutional republic ended in 1861. That's never been reconstituted. And as far as I'm concerned, Lincoln's War that started in 1861, the war of aggression against the people of the United States of America, is ongoing. Even at the same time, they do things like they set up the Food and Drug Administration allegedly to make us more healthier, and actually back then it was a useful thing, although it was none of their damn business. That should have been on a state level. Okay? You know, they're farming us. They're keeping us healthy at the same way you keep a sheep healthy so that you can eat it, but they're not working in our best interest. They are making war on the things that really matter to us, the pillars of society. And I know we have some disagreements on, some things like religion, but maybe we could do a show on those sometimes, because I think there's some things you may not know. But this ongoing war on us is kind of like the ongoing war of humanity versus sheep. As long as they do as they're bloody well told, they can be reasonably happy up until slaughter day. And that's fine for sheep. That's not what men are for.
I refer to what they have done is they have refined the art of slavery to the point the slaves don't know they're slaves. I'm not a slave. I can go get my pickup and go get a beer. Watch.
That's right. And, well, it's the same on any slave plantation. Every slave has his own property that he can trade with other slaves. He can go to the supervisor and say, can I get this job over here? And that's a better job. I'd rather have that job, and I get to wear nicer clothes. And the supervisor says, well, if you'll learn this skill or that skill on your own, then I'll let you have that better job. He's on the same plantation. He's still a slave. He just went and took some training and got a better job, so now he can wear some nicer clothes, live in a nicer hut, and get a prettier girl. It's exactly this. The slave organization is at the state and county level, and the cities are the direct supervisors.
I would say the cities in the 21st century are basically the ghettos of today. I mean, this is where the police state lies. I mean, how many people are driving around the city feel a little warm glow of comfort seeing a police car in the back mirror?
That is just weird. I mean, really, that's just weird. But I mentioned that the control grid was at the state and county level, and the cities, the direct supervisors. The nation is the plantation, and I say that because you have to have official permission to move from one plantation to another, whereas you don't have to have official permission to move from one field to another on the plantation. You got to have that passport to cross that border.
Which is interesting right now. My passport has expired, and I can't cross over into Mexico. I mean, were they building the fence to keep the Mexicans out, or us in?
You can't, wait a minute, you can't get into Mexico, or you can't get back into the U.S. after you leave?
I probably can't get back into the U.S. after I leave, and if they'll allow me. I've been told that you have to have a passport to go into Mexico now.
Yeah, but they say all kinds of crap. I mean, when I was in San Diego, my night job was driving cab, and people hired me to take them over to Tijuana and show them the hot spots. And there were all kinds of stories put out by even the cops at the border would say things as you were leaving that weren't true. It's like they don't know anything, man. It's like they read comic books and go enforce the law they read in them. It's hilarious. I believe that you would have no trouble at all getting into Mexico. Getting back into the U.S. becomes your problem, or getting into another country from there. However, I know places like in the Philippines, if I've got ID and a passport, and I show up with a boatload of refugees, and they all have proper ID, the fact that I have a passport is going to get me to the harbor master, and I've already contacted the Philippine authorities. I know for a fact that it would not be difficult to fill out some paperwork and get these other people who don't have passports into the Philippines on provisional visas. They're not going to be turned away to starve at sea.
And let's talk for just a moment before we get into generators locally. The original reason I contacted you or started talking to you was because you had an idea for your own form of Liberty Village, except it was floating, and I really like that. I spent a lot of time. I've written 2 novels about life on a houseboat. And you've really come up and designed the ultimate houseboat, and there are
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not anti-religion, by the way, folks. I believe that God is alive and well right now, today. Listen to this show, and he just uses the internet. Because the last time I had you on my show, Joshua, I got this little story in about somebody building a boat, or actually it was almost like a floating city. Part of the city was underwater.
Yeah.
And part of the city was above water, and it could sail just like a boat, moved in the water just like a boat or a submarine. Have you ever seen that?
I have designed one like that. Our floating colony, about half mile long, can be built out of floating concrete blocks, where you build a 10-foot by 10-foot by 10-foot hollow concrete block, and it has to be, it's got to be shaped like a giant Lego, and there's all kinds of engineering problems that you have to work out before you build it and drop it into the water. But you build thousands of these things on an assembly line and drop them into the water, bring them together. You make a gigantic half mile long ship that has, it's got 2 different levels that it will float at. When it's moving through the water, it blows the water out of its ballast tanks, and it reduces its draft to 40, 50 feet, and it's going through the water. When it's sitting in one place, it fills its buoyancy tanks so that it settles down into the water. It's very solid, very stable, and there are submarine pens down there so that your mining submarines have a place to come in and dock. This is not even fantastic, given what we know about naval architecture and building things in the water out of concrete. Because, of course, concrete will grow barnacles, but it doesn't rust. If anything, your ship just gets bigger.
Yeah, what about the maintenance on these? I mean, I've had my boat in once a year probably to get all the barnacles scraped off of the hull.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I've looked at that on how to make that more of or less of an expensive proposition, because it's a few $100s to do a haul out and barnacle scrape. And if we're doing all of our hulls exactly the same, we should be able to make a little barnacle scraping machine that is it's fitted to the hull, and it just moves from one end to the other and cuts them all off, and you give the guy his $50 and sail away. But you've got maintenance, and one of the things we're even looking at is a disposable outer hull, where instead of scraping the barnacles off, you take off a half-inch sheet off the outside, throw it away, and bolt on a new one and go on. That would be kind of cool. We're looking into that. That may not work, but we'd like to do it that way. Other than that, you've got very, very few moving parts. For example, your Your refrigerator, when you're at sea, is kept cold by what's called a vortex gun. This is a very simple little thing where the motion of the waves moves a float, and the float moves a piston, and the piston compresses some air. The air goes into a specially shaped tube, and 250-degree air comes out one end, minus 150-degree air comes out the other. This is old news. They're commercially available, used for cooling and heating and spot heating and spot cooling. All right, so you've got in that system I just described, you've got a piston which will eventually, its rings will wear out and needs replaced, and you have a hinge where the float is moving up and down and forcing the piston to move, which will eventually need replaced.
Let me stop you for just a second, because what you're describing, I envisioned, in the talking about electric and control of the electric, control of the gas, they control all that. But if you build an electric car, and we're quite capable of doing that, Tesla's doing a good job of that. The wheels, as they're running along the road, are generating enough electricity to recharge all of your batteries. And what you're describing in the water, you keep your batteries charged and everything from the action of the waves. I mean, all of the answers seem to be here right now.
Well, they are. One of the things that I determined when I embarked on this project 12 years ago was no new technology. I'm not going to go invent something new, and I mean, inventing something new is long and painful. It's like raising children, geez. And I knew that we already had all the technology somewhere. I just had to dig it up. And I realized, as I was working through this, that one of the reasons that our enemies are so able to really just hammer us in place in whatever house we happen to be in is because our society is built on a vulnerability that's throughout, but it's one that they suffer from less than we do. And that is, if you live on land, you have to have energy and goods brought to you. If you live on the water, you're where the energy is. All you have to do is reach down and scoop it out of the waves, and the food comes underneath you if you like seafood, which I don't, so I'm going to grow it on board. But the resources are right there. In the seawater is all the minerals that I need to make plant food to grow my own crops on board. And I can go with my ship to wherever there's forests or rocks to quarry, where there's not a human being for 100 miles. Nobody will care if I cut down that tree or dig that rock out of the ground. And so I've got a situation where instead of the resources and the energy having to be brought to me and I have to pay for that, I am where they are, and it cost me nothing to move here and there. And even if I've got to go a 4-month sailing trip to find something I need, that's not time spent away from my family, because these are floating homes. I got the whole family with me. This is when we homeschool. This is when I become really expert on my musical instruments, because I'm on watch, 12 hours a day, and there's nothing to do but play.
A satellite on your boat, and you've got connection to the internet, gives you connection, your children connection to the schools. We got Timothy Bible College, Little Red Schoolhouse, all that's available.
Well, buy a copy of Britannica. It's $700 on paper. You want to educate your children? Don't start with McGuffey's Reader. The best dictionary I ever saw was the Reader's Digest Unabridged. It's the size of your head, and it's good lexicography. I mean, the editors at Reader's Digest know what they're doing. And you sit down with that kid and say, okay, here's the world you live in. First, let's start with how we record information at A, B, C, D, and go. Starting with simple, with something like McGuffey's Reader, is called the triangular method of education. It produces flaming idiots, where triangle means you, on any given subject like reading, or let's just say science. You start at the tip of the triangle, which is very small. They learn a little bit of science, and next year the triangle, as they're moving down the triangle, it's fattening out. They learn a little more science, and then the next year they learn a little more and a little more and a little more. That seems logical, but it's not a good way to do things. The cylindrical method says, we're going to take big bites. But we're going to divide things up even smaller so that we can take big bites. So let's say you've got a 6-year-old kid. It's time for them to start helping you in the garden on the ship. You don't hold anything back. You tell, when you say, we have to keep records of how many days the light has been set at 12 hours on and 12 hours off, because in this many weeks, we're going to change that schedule to force the plants to come into bloom 2 weeks early, and then force them to drop their fruit 2 weeks early, but perfectly ripe. The kid has to learn that. There's no reason to give him the simple version, and then later when he's smarter, give him the more complicated version. Lay it on him now, so he's got it, and you could actually give him a piece of the hydroponic garden and say, here, anything that comes out of there is, you will have grown that. So you know how to do it now. You start by preparing your nutrient solution, and you pick the crops you're going to grow, and let the kid do it. People can learn amazing amounts of things amazingly early. And the bit-by-bit method of education prevents them from doing that. And that's just kind of a pet peeve for me, off topic, but you can do that, excuse me, when you've got the whole family there and you're homeschooling. Take your copy of Britannica, take the other textbooks. I mean, sheesh, you can go to any college campus and buy back books at the end of the semester for nothing, when the kids are selling their books back to the bookstore and anybody else who will buy them. You can do that at high school level. So while I appreciate you can get the internet by satellite, I say it's not really a necessity. And eventually, we're going to have to build our own internet anyway, which out on the ocean is less of a difficult proposition than a lot of people might think.
Now, I have heard that there is actually quite a bit of gold contained in our ocean waters. Is it possible to extract that?
Not with current technology. Here's what they're talking about. Seawater is 97% water, 2.5% salt, so right, and 0.5% everything else in the periodic table. So in that 0.5%, there's 100 and some elements in the periodic table. So roughly 100th of that 0.5% is gold. It's there. It's just in trace amounts, and you've got to boil down cubic miles of seawater and then separate out all the elements to get at it. It's currently cheaper to dig it out of the ground. And frankly, yeah?
You've talked about mining, so getting minerals from the ocean is a feasible idea, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, the mining refers to the fact that there are 750 places that we know about where the undersea mountains come to within 150 feet of the surface. That's not even a tricky proposition for mining. That's not even difficult. You don't even need to send down a true submarine. You send down a drill head with a camera and a fresh water pump on it to keep the silt away from the camera so you can see what you're doing. You operate it remotely. Suck the sludge that it drills out up to your ship for processing to sort out the ores you're looking for. That's not tricky at all.
Now, a lot of people, I know a lot of people that simply don't feel about the ocean the way you and I do. I would love to live there. I love diving.
Our intention, but this was not really designed for to require you to live at sea. It's designed so that when you need to leave, you can. See, here's the problem with being a refugee and with the kind of problems we face right now. Look back at history. Let's go back and say, okay, right now it's 1937. We're in Nazi Germany, and we're talking about what crazy Adolf is doing to the country. All right. At what point do we know we need to leave? And you can go all through the history of World War II and not identify a single point at which that person should have known it was time to leave until the Gestapo knocked on the door.
We were at that point. My guest yesterday talked about, it's time to start shooting. Claire Wolf wrote an article that said it's too soon to shoot the bastards. My guest yesterday argued that we may have to start doing that. It's possible, but I'm looking for answers. And one of those the answers I came up with, and I want to talk about this on the second half, is the Liberty Village concept. Now, I've got a film up of a woman in upstate New York in a neighborhood, one square block neighborhood, and she has a garden in her backyard, and she's supplying all of her neighbors with food. I've said that the Liberty Village, if you can grow your own food and generate your own electricity from everything God gave us, whatever you choose to believe He is, we got the sun, we got the wind, we got the magnetics.
Yeah.
And if we grow our own food in our backyard and we generate electricity from our roof, we can sell that back to the power companies, and every time we build another solar panel, if you want to build them yourself or if you want to buy them, every time you add another solar panel, you make more money off of that unit, don't you?
Theoretically, prices have to be at a very different ratio than what they are right now for that to work. For example, if you're in the Dominican Republic, they're paying $1.17 for a kilowatt hour. Here in the United States, we're paying 13.5 cents for a kilowatt hour. So if you want to go set up a solar panel farm in the Dominican Republic and sell that power, yes, you can make money on it. Here in the U.S., over the lifespan of that panel, 30, 40 years, probably.
Hold on a minute. We just had a interruption here in our Skype call. We've lost sound on our Skype, so hold on just a moment. I may have to go to another unit here. Hold on, folks. We'll get it back.
You're calling back into a live show. We're reconnecting you now. Welcome to Talk Show. Please enter the call ID followed by the pound key. You may access the call up to 15 minutes before its scheduled start time. Your entry is not valid, or your call is not scheduled at this time. 875. Enter your PIN followed by the pound key. If you are not a Talk Show member, press You may dial at any time during this announcement. Enter your PIN followed by the pound key. If you are not a Talk Show member, press 1 then pound.
God damn
For
it.
access to all features,
Hello, hello. Hello, who's this?
Your PIN was not recognized or is being used by another caller.
Yeah, hang on a minute. I'm trying to get hooked back up.
Be unreliable across the internet.
Hang on.
Please be persistent. You may dial at any time.